So he's running for re-election against you, not against Donald Trump, against you. And he's going to kick things off this Friday with a speech in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. And what will the theme of that speech be? Well, the deputy communications director for his campaign appeared on CNN and gave us a little hint.
Why Valley Forge for Saturday? Are you expecting a cold winter?
No, we're expecting a very good winter come next November. But look, we chose Valley Forge. George Washington, as you just said, unionized colonies there and brought them all together. And then he became president and set the precedent for, a peaceful transition of power, something that Donald Trump and Republicans refused to do just as late as yesterday. And we believe that they pose an existential threat to democracy. And over the last 4 years, that threat to democracy has only grown.
So a couple of things here. First of all, understand what he just said. Republicans are an existential threat to democracy. Republican, not Donald Trump, not Rudy Giuliani, not Roger Stone. Republicans, the great uniter. This is the message from his campaign. Republicans are an existential threat to democracy. Number one. Number two, Valley Forge. You think Valley Forge, you think of two things. Well, you think of three things. You think of snow, you think of the Continental Army, and you think of George Washington. Democrats, last I checked, are tearing down statues of George Washington every chance they get. They hate George Washington. They revile George Washington, but they'll use him as a prop if they can hammer you. If they can beat themselves on the chest and say, I'm patriotic, I'm following in George Washington's footsteps, and if you disagree with me, then you're the enemy, not just of the people and the country, but of George Washington himself. That's the message they're trying to send. When they're not tearing down George Washington, they're using him as a cheap, despicable political prop. Number two, the Continental Army in Valley Forge. Those men starved to death. They had smallpox. They didn't have equipment. They didn't have blankets. They didn't have shoes in the winter. And they persevered through that winter so that they could take up arms and beat the strongest, mightiest fighting force on the planet, the British Army, so that we could have our independence. And do you think they fought like that so that Joe Biden could be president? Yeah, he's using their memory, their sacrifice, their despair, their lives. Valley Forge is a sacred place. People died there. And he's using their legacy for his own cheap, divisive political tactics. What a despicable human being this president is. And finally, the winter. The third thing we remember Valley Forge about, right? Washington, Continental Army, winter. It was the worst winter, right? That's all anybody remembers. What a terrible winter this is, but they persevered. So as you just heard, the speech is scheduled for this Saturday, January 6th, to mark the anniversary of the insurrection, right? Well, they just recently now had to reschedule it. They've rescheduled it to tomorrow, Friday, instead of Saturday. Why? Because there's a snow front moving in. And it's going to be a little too cold and a little too snowy for little Joey Biden to give his speech. He's scheduled it for January 6th in Valley Forge. Valley Forge is known for this incredible winter that our Continental Army persevered through. He's using it as a prop, and he can't even do it with a snowfall going on. He had to reschedule because he's so delicate and fragile. What a jerk. Oh, by the way, this is not the first time he has used a remnant or an icon, a national monument of the Revolutionary War to divide this country and to point the finger at you as the enemy of our Constitution. Let's not forget, he gave this speech in front of Independence Hall, warning of the growing fascism in this country. I mean, look at him with the red light, blood-drenched landscape behind him of Independence Hall with clenched fists, shouting like a madman. Who's the fascist in this picture? You, for wanting to make sure that we've got a secure election? Look at him. He's Joe Mussolini, not Joe Biden. And he continues to do this. These landmarks of American freedom he uses as political props. And he claims he's the one who's protecting this country. He says that he's the one who's fighting back against an existential threat to our Constitution and our republic. Well, let's check the scorecard on that, shall we? Because last I checked, it was Joe Biden who utilized the Justice Department and laws that have never been enforced against a former president, let alone a current candidate for president, who's, by the way, leading in the polls, his chief political opponent. He's the one who's using the Justice Department and laws to throw him behind bars and prosecute his chief political opponent. He's the one who's trying to twist the Constitution to keep Donald Trump, not just from being president, but from keeping you from being able to vote for him. Yeah, he's all for voting rights, and yet it's he and his party who's actually trying to keep Donald Trump from the ballot in Colorado and Maine. They don't even want you to have the ability to vote for him. Not because they fear Donald Trump, it's because they fear you. And by the way, last I checked, this just in, Joe Biden teaming up with the state of North Carolina have just now made it so that he is the only person on the ballot for their primary. If you're a Democrat in North Carolina and you go to vote for your candidate, for your party, your nominee, you have one choice, Joe Biden. Marianne Williamson is not very happy about that. She tweeted out a statement saying that she's running for president, you know. So is a Congressman, Sean Phillips, I believe his name is. Or is it Dean Phillips? Yeah, Dean, that's it. And Cenk Uyghur. All three of them are very upset that North Carolina won't allow their names on the ballot. Again, this is Joe Biden and the Democrat Party trying to protect democracy, making it so that Democrats only have one choice when they go to vote. That's pretty authoritarian. That's banana republic stuff. It got so bad that Robert F. Kennedy Jr., I don't know, last I checked, the Kennedy name meant something for Democrats. He actually pulled out of the Democrat process and he's running as an independent because he knew he wasn't going to show up on any ballots anywhere while he was polling around 20% against Biden. By the way, on an aside, I do like the fact that Cenk Uyghur was upset that he couldn't appear on the ballot, considering the fact that he wasn't even born in America. He's not a naturally born citizen. He has no business running for president, but that's another story. We're in the middle of it, guys. This is the presidential election year. We are, 11 days away from the Iowa caucus. The New Hampshire primary is 19 days away. And Joe Biden now officially going after you. Going after you. You are not just his political opponent. You are his political enemy. And as far as he's concerned, based on that ad he ran and based on the speech he's going to give tomorrow, you are the enemy of this nation. That's your great unifier. That's your great moderate, good old Uncle Joe. Vote accordingly, please.